church bulletin. Or tapestry, sorry. I've emailed you more information with the time slots, so you can come for as many time slots as you want or just one. The easiest thing to do is come for dinner. You do have to sign up. There's a link that I'm in the email, or you can let me know kind of what you want to do. I saw Cody already signed up.
Yes.
Catherine signed up. So it's really an easy thing, an easy way to get involved, and it's really rewarding kind of getting to know these women too. So
Seeing them last year, they were very appreciative. And I don't know about this year, but the knitting group, the senior knitting group, knitted them a summer shawl. It was summertime then, but it was a light, lacy shawl. And you would have thought, and they didn't know the ladies, but they knew how many places were set for them at dinner. And they laid a different colored ones, and their faces just beamed in that.
Yeah, they're very, very grateful. So what day is that? It's on January 19th. Setup starts about 4. If you're interested in that, dinner's around 6. So again, the email kind of has like the time frame. So if you have questions, you can email me or catch me.
All right, hello everyone. I'm going to move this chair over in case I need it. Let me say to those who are part of our extended class via live stream, if you live in the Dallas area and just can't be here on Sunday mornings with us, and would like to participate in our mission activities or our class parties, please, we would love for you to do that. And also, if you'd like to be part of our class email list, if you would email me or email the address that's on the screen in a few moments, we'll be glad to add you to that so that we know you're there. So just because you can't be here on Sunday morning doesn't mean that you can't be part of our extended class activities. Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for your prayers for me over the last few weeks. I missed the last week of the year due to my medical condition, and then we were off for 2 weeks due to Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. And I'll give you a very quick update, and we can talk more at prayer time, but let me explain myself just a bit. I think most of you are aware that on December 13th, I had a surgical procedure. There's a cervical decompression on the left side. As far as we know, that was successful. And the reason we don't know is I've been on so much pain med ever since that we really don't know. I'm going to become a drug dealer soon. Yeah. Something happened during the surgery that we can't explain. There are possible reasons for this, but it's not worth chasing that rabbit trail. I had a non-traumatic spinal cord injury on the right side around C4-5, a bruising of the spinal cord, sort of. It is significant, and Amy, I was talking to Rita this morning. She said, "Can I show your MRI to Amy?" I said, "Absolutely. Show it to whoever you want to." Rita Hamilton is a longtime member here, and is one of my doctors at Baylor Institute of Rehabilitation. And the injury is significant enough that when she saw my MRI, just like other neurosurgeons who had looked at it, they were surprised I was walking. And so I have fluctuated for the past weeks between, oh my God, fear and gratitude and anxiety and thankfulness, and I've just sort of bounced back and forth while medicated.
Depends on what time of the day.
I have been so humorous that my son, who's living at home, has been live tweeting his brother and friends crazy stuff Dad has said. Some of which is not fit for repeating in a Sunday school class.
Especially on live stream.
Mark. How's Maggie doing since because she can feel that you're probably not.
She's been very loving, but she's had her own problems.
For those of you who don't know, that's a dog.
Maggie the dog, yeah, the soft-coated Wheaten Terrier. We've been on some walks and so forth. So to add insult to injury, this past week I ended up with an upper respiratory thing that I'm pretty much getting over, but it's just still sort of congested in my head, and I'm not contagious. I'm just whatever.
It's been all over TV.
It's just, dear God, one more thing. You know, it's the little things that just push right? Some of you know what I'm talking about. Just right over the edge.
How's Allison in all of this?
The edge is not a bad place to be, Hart says.
Well, actually, it's the straw that broke the camel.
The straw that broke the camel's back. Absolutely.
But
And
we
this
love you. It's
Just
all-
nearly, like, I'm not going to survive. I'm not sure that, you know, something that normally would be okay, right? So anyhow, I start therapy tomorrow. The holidays have delayed things because of that. Going to be in the care of the good folks at Baylor Institute of Rehabilitation with Amy's folks as well. So,
Is it down on 75?
no, down at Baylor.
Oh, it's hospital.
Yeah, at Landry. Yeah. So thank you. Someone said to me this morning, one of you said, I've been praying for you continuously. And I said, please, like the breadsticks at Olive Garden, bottomless prayers, please. Keep it coming. Absolutely keep it coming. But I'm mindful that there are many of you in our class who have your own issues as well that we need to be mindful of praying for. And I look at so many of you who are facing long-term battles. And one of the things I found myself thinking this past week is I know I'm going to get better. I know they've told me they're going to have, this is going to heal. I found myself asking, what is the spiritual work I need to be doing before I'm healed? And I think I've sort of failed at that. And this is my own confession. I think I have not done the spiritual work I need to do during this time in the wilderness. And I'm working on that. This is not my specialty. Those of you who know me well know meditation, silence, quiet. These things do not come naturally to me. All these spiritual disciplines. We have other people around here who do those things really well, not me. And that's sort of where I've been forced into this time, and I've not stepped in and accepted that very well. So as you pray for me and for others, pray that when we're in this time of healing, that we would have the ears to hear and the eyes to see. And I hope that some months from now, I will be able to look back and say that I'm in a better place spiritually because of what's happened to me. I hope I'll be more compassionate toward other people who face disabilities. I hope I won't forget this moment. And I'm not saying that God makes things happen for a purpose so that we're somehow different. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying when life throws us a curveball that we cannot explain, we've got to listen and find a way. The interesting side note to this is my neurosurgeon, who I really, really like, is a devout Catholic. I think I've told some of you all this. His brother is a Catholic priest. And we've had several conversations about why did this happen. As a man of science, it's driving him nuts that he can't figure it out. He wants to be able to say, this happened because I did that. And I'm not ever going to do that again, so it didn't happen to someone else. But in my particular case, there is no clear explanation that X caused Y. It just happened. And I sat in his office a few weeks ago, and we had this conversation about why do bad things happen to good people, assuming I'm a good person. And I said, look, I'm willing to accept that sometimes bad things just happen. And he said, I'm not. Because the essence of it, I'm condensing here, the essence of it was, if I believe that random bad things happen in surgery, how can I have the confidence to ever operate again? I can't believe that. And I said, well, as a pastor, I've got to believe it. And so one of the blessings of this has been the wonderful conversation that he and I have had out of this. I'm certainly changed because of him. I think he's changed because of me. He said, when we were back 1 week after this happened, he said, I've not slept for a week. Because I've been so worried about this, and he said, my staff will tell you I'm obsessed over this, trying to figure this out. And the staff member who was taking notes over on the computer looked at Allison and went, right. So I'm happy to answer any question you have later. Please, there's nothing off limits here. I'm an open book about what's going on. I'm working when I can, doing what I can. If it weren't for this stupid upper respiratory thing that sort of came in and made me foggy, I was doing better. And hopefully this week we'll do better again. I still can't drive because of the medication I'm on mainly. I am gaining use of my right hand, and you'll see I can actually hold some things and so forth. I would not trust me with the family china. Or anything
I wouldn't trust me with
worth
it.
more than 20 to 30 bucks. Yeah. There are certain dishes that Allison will not let me hold.
I guess you got out of dishwashing.
No, I have been helping wash the dishes. This morning I unloaded and loaded the dishwasher.
That's therapy.
But my left arm is getting a big workout, and my right arm is not, and it's tearing up my back. So, there you go.
One thing that I had, that you didn't, you had left arm, I had both arms in it.
That's right.
Oh, that-
I've thought of several of y'all who have both arms disabled. I thought, oh my God. I would be completely crazy, Paul.
Well, I remember your mother telling me one time that you never could sit still.
Not even as a
In one
child.
thing or the other as a child.
Yeah.
And one of the things I've been praying for was for you to learn.
Oh, Polly. It's all your fault.
And also you asked for patience for Allison, and I prayed for her too.
Okay, I never pray for patience because it's a bad gift.
That's a
It's
dead
very
end.
bad. Do not ever pray for patience.
And don't ever resolve to have it.
I've heard you say that before.
Pray for endurance.
Endurance. Yeah, that I could do. Even as a preschooler, I was in daycare. My mother was a school teacher. And my dad worked full time. I'm an only child. And so I went to a home, this woman's home, she kept some children. Now, keep in mind, this was the 60s, right? And every afternoon, it was nap time for all the kids but me. Because I would not nap. And the woman finally just got fed up with the whole thing. And there was a special toy that we hid. None of the other kids knew it was there. And when they went and took their naps, I went somewhere else and played with this toy.
Oh,
Because I would not nap, could not sit still, right?
You've been spoiled all your life.
So I've been spoiled from an early age.
you
Well,
can't win this group.
Charlene, would you like to introduce your guest?
Yes, this is Joanne Craven. She is a Wilshire member, and we met at Cornerstone on Christmas Eve.
Certainly. Okay,
Glad to have you.
very good. I think everyone else has been here before, along the way.
She wants recognition.
Sorry.
Hart, we're always glad to have you back. Bob, glad to see you as well today. And Gina, we continue to remember you in our prayers in your journey as well. Okay, well today we are beginning a new study that I hope you're excited about. It's a study of the parables. So we're going to talk today, and probably next week too, sort of setting the stage for how to understand the parables. Let me ask, as we begin, what experience do any of you have with reading or understanding? Have any of you ever studied just the parables before, Mark?
Yes, when I was teaching, we had the Catechism of the Good Shepherd, and each parable was in a golden box with visuals for the children.
Wow.
And for instance, in the mustard box, you would pull out a felt mustard tree and bring in the birds, and the children had the opportunity to use those time and time again, and it was amazing what they did with those. For instance, with the birds, this little boy had the mom and dad separate, and then at the end of several weeks, he had them together. I mean, it was just an amazing nonverbal work that they did that was so meaningful to them on so many levels.
That sounds really cool.
Yeah, it's
What other experiences do you have with studying the parables?
On GA, I remember us always being told it's an earthly story with a heavenly meaning.
An earthly story with a heavenly meaning. That's a good line. For those of you who don't know what GA's was, Girls in Action. Girls Auxiliary. Sorry. It became Girls in Action later.
When I got your email,
Yes.
and I read, I was in bed, and I thought, what was it? And I got up and went in my computer room, and
All the parables of the Bible. There you go.
so I just didn't know which one you were gonna do first, so.
I don't either. Yeah. Who else has an experience with parables? Mike?
When I was in college, I taught Sunday school to preschoolers.
Oh, yeah.
Mostly, I was kind of their music leader with guitar, and there was an author that whose music I used.
The audio on the live stream?
Say what?
The audio on the live stream?
No audio on the live stream? I would give a hand signal, but I'm very bad at that. Hang on a second. See if we- Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, there was some specific parables that would put the music by this one composer that I would sing to the children and teach them. So they would actually learn the parable in a song.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Maybe we should incorporate that.
Yeah, we should have a lesson, music lesson
Have
instead.
you ever heard me sing?
Yes, Cody?
What everyone said is it's a heavenly story with an or earthly story with a heavenly or whatever. I got it backwards. But my grandmother was a Christian Scientist. And when I came home talking about that from, I don't think it was GA's, but I think it was Vacation Bible School sometime or something, she gave me, because she thought it was very meaningful, and I still have it. It's, you know how when you're kind of young, if you're a girl, you have a little pearl seed kind of vein, and off of it, and in was a clear ball with a mustard seed. And I still have that.
As a reminder of the parable of the mustard
exactly,
seed.
yes.
Y'all are really fixating on the mustard seed. Maybe we need to do it. Yeah. Who else has an experience? These are great stories. I love this. I love this. Well, one of the reasons the parables are so present with us is that in the synoptic gospels, and when we talk about the synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, because they sort of follow a similar pattern, differently than John. In the synoptic gospels, the parables constitute about 35% of everything Jesus is quoted as saying. 35%. In the Gospel of Luke, 52% of everything Luke quotes Jesus saying is a parable. Half. Right? In Matthew, it's 43%. So Jesus, best we can tell, if you boil it all down, there's about 40 stories in his repertoire that get told. How often he told them, with what degree of improvisation, what the context, we don't really know. But it seems likely that he told these stories over and over and over again as a teaching style. And so we want to begin there in this conversation about what is a parable and how do we understand them. I'd call your attention first, if you have your Bible, to Mark chapter 4, verses 33 and 34. Mark 4, 33 and 34. Give you just a moment to get there. Would someone volunteer just read those two verses to us? Can you find it?
Mark 4 what?
Mark 4, 33 and 34.
I've got it.
All right, go ahead.
And with many such parables spake he the word unto them, as they were able to hear it. And without a parable spake he not unto them, but privately to his own disciples he expounded all things.
So here's an acknowledgement from Mark in his gospel that Jesus spoke often in parables, and that he he would interpret the parables to his disciples. The interesting thing is that what's been preserved for us is the parable and not the interpretation. And that's probably a good thing. Because the purpose of the parable is to make us have to figure it out ourselves. If we had been given the interpretation in that moment, we might fail to do the work to interpret it for ourselves. One of the joys of a parable is it's a lesson that keeps on teaching along the way. The people who heard Jesus speak in parables needed to figure it out on their own, and so do we.
So were the people smarter than his disciples then?
No, they were not.
Explain it to the disciples, and sometimes they still didn't get it.
Well, the disciples were dense.
Just like us, Mark.
I mean, for those of you who really want to follow a book, I'm drawing from multiple resources in this study. But the book that I've fallen in love with, that today's lesson is primarily based on, is a book by Amy Jill Levine called Short Stories by Jesus. And Amy Jill Levine, I had the privilege of hearing at SMU this past year. Big shout out to Perkins School of Theology at SMU for doing some really great programming and having great speakers through their continuing education program. And they let Baptists come. Amy Jill Levine is Jewish. And she's one of the preeminent New Testament scholars in America today.
I've heard you say that. How can that be?
Well, she has a wonderful perspective on everything. And she, even though she's not a Christian, she understands Christianity. And she has the lens of a Jewish scholar applied to it, which really, and in this case, it's fascinating.
It is.
Her book on this is the best one I've read.
It confuses me because she can understand them so well, but yet she doesn't believe.
Well, no, she believes Jesus was a great teacher.
Yes, but she doesn't believe he was the Messiah.
That's right.
That
Yeah.
is the biggest bone of contention in the Jewish Christianity course I took this last fall.
Yeah.
I sat in a room with 7 people from Temple Emmanuel. They believed that he was a great teacher, but he was just a little man from a village, and he had a carpenter, dad was a carpenter. And yes, and how in the world can we believe that he was the Messiah? Now that's, I mean, they're not mean about it. That's just, it's as definite as you are of how can she understand. They can't understand how in the world anyone ever determined that he was the Messiah of the world. Now I'm not saying that I think that, but that's exactly what I heard night
Well, Dr.
after
Levine
night after
has
night.
wonderful insights, among others. So I want to give you this quote from her. I have a single Tom Wright quote today.
No.
I'll try to remedy that. So we've got Amy Jill Levine quotes instead today. She says, reducing parables to a single meaning destroys their aesthetic as well as ethical potential. Let me say that one more time because I think it's really important. Reducing parables to a single meaning destroys their aesthetic as well as ethical potential. The theologian philosopher Soren Kierkegaard told the story of a king who issued a royal command to everyone in his realm. In this story, the message of the king produced an unexpected response from the subjects. Instead of endeavoring to obey the command, they all became interpreters of it, trying to figure out what it really meant. And soon, this body of criticism had captured the imagination of all the people who became fierce partisans of this or that critical position about what the edict of the king really meant. Everything had become interpretation, but no one paid the least attention to the command. The king was willing to forgive his subjects everything except, Kierkegaard said, their mistaken notion of what is truly important. He framed his parable with the question, what is the difference between criticism of a text and radical accountability to it? The question involves its own answer. It's a warning to us if we are foolish enough to engage in critical reflection on the parables of Jesus and yet not be held accountable to them. The problem in reading, one of the problems as we approach the parables is we can put them in a little box and say, this parable means this, and this parable means this, and this parable means this. When in fact, to do that is to deny the possibility that the parable has the ability to help you see this, and me see this, and you see that, and throughout the parables transcend time. So Jesus did not tell parables just as a point in time story. Jesus told parables because they're enduring.
Mark, don't you think it's a brilliant way to teach?
Oh, it's a brilliant way to teach. Yes, it's a brilliant way to teach. Joni?
NIV study notes on the Mark passage. It says, Jesus used parables to illustrate truths, stimulate thinking, and awaken spiritual perception. The people in general were not ready for the full truth of the gospel. When alone with his disciples, Jesus taught more specifically that even they usually needed to have things explained.
Good word.
And I be zapped them all.
We're going to talk more about this idea because I'll foreshadow this by saying one of the problems with parables is it's too easy to dismiss them when they're too hard and we're not willing to follow what they say. The hardest part about Christianity is not the things we don't understand. It's living out the things we do understand. And it's easy to hide behind a parable and say, well, I don't think I really understand what that means. When in your heart of hearts, you know exactly what it means as well. Okay. Okay, we talked about the disciples already. I'm not going to go there. Amy Jill Levine says, we shouldn't be too hard on the disciples. They were looking for something within their comfort zone, and like many of us, resisted what the parables might convey. And when Jesus was requiring that they would do more than listen, he was asking them to think as well. He wasn't just asking them to listen and receive information. He was asking them to think about it. He told them in Mark, to you has been given the mystery of the kingdom of God, but for those outside, everything comes in parables, in order that they may indeed look, but not perceive, and may indeed listen, but not understand. And here's her quote. What makes the parables mysterious or difficult is that they challenge us to look into the hidden aspects of our own values, our own lives. Here's a problem, I think, with Christianity today, among many. We've tried to boil everything down to a simple PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Or a little card. Or a bumper sticker. Or a simple philosophy. Or what? So much of Christianity today is distilled in a way that's given like pills to patients. Take this and you're going to be spiritual. Read this book and you're going to know the spiritual life. Do this and you're going to have your best life now. I mean, do you see the problem? Listen to this sermon with 5 points for what you ought to do this week. Right? This is the way Christianity is today. And the parables are not that. They're old school analog technology. Right? They are not PowerPoints. But they engage us. they force us to think. One of the challenges in the church today is people don't want to think. People do. I've told you before, one of my favorite stories, some years ago, we had a family leave the church. This is one of my favorite stories. We had a family leave the church, and the man, the husband in that family came to George and said, you know, I have to think all week at work. When I come to church, I don't want to have to think, and your sermons make me have to think. I want to go somewhere where I hear sermons that can tell me what I think. That's scary. But that's sort of, I mean, we sort of get that way, right? Donna?
I think it's very popular in some of the churches that when you go there, the order of worship is nothing but, you know, the sermon, and it'll give like a paragraph, and you fill in the missing word when you hear it.
It's like a word search.
It's a word search, and 1, 2, 3, 4 points, you know, and you fill it in, so you don't have to think, oh, yeah, Jesus is. And the preacher says love, and you write love in. And,
Tell me the answer.
you know, that's Bible study. That's good preaching.
Well,
For me, it's not.
it's so much of our Christian life and the resources around us are that way.
Yeah.
Tell me what it means. Tell me what it means. Yeah. An old preacher friend of mine years ago, when I was a young seminarian, told me there are two kinds of preachers in the world. There are those who preach answers and those who preach questions. And the best preachers preach questions.
That's a good way to put it.
Right? And that's the way Jesus taught. In questions. Yeah. That's what the parables really are. Someone else with a thought on that before we move on? Terry?
Well, we'll share the whole Catholic thing. The Catholic Church is, as you know, it's universal, so you can go to any church and it's exactly the same order. And a lot of sermons are written, you do not question. And I went to high school in Sherman, which is very Baptist country, and have one little Catholic church. And I remember sitting there in high school and I asked a question. I don't know what the question was, but I asked a question. And the priest just looked at me and he goes, "Thou shalt not question the
Oh,
Catholic
wow.
Church." You know, so that you're just supposed to sit and just take it. And there's a movie, I can't remember the name of the movie, but there's a lady sitting in a Catholic service. She goes, "I liked it better when it was Latin because I didn't understand
Yes.
A few years after I graduated from Baylor, which was a long time ago, in one of the newsletters, there was an article on, they've been renovating one of the older buildings, torn the surface of a wall down, and inside the wall there were test papers from the 19th century. There was no such thing as multiple choice, fill in the blank. Every question asked was an essay question for everything, every test you took. And even in the 70s and 80s, we were so intellectually lazy as a society. We would have been horrified if we took a class that didn't simplify things, dumb things down to the level it just made it faster and easier to grade.
Yeah. Well, those of you who are educators know the best way to measure whether someone has content is can explain it to you. And more than that, can you teach it to someone else? Right?
I bought 2 books, one on Old Testament, one on the New Testament to study, you know. I thought it was gonna be enlightening so I could learn some things, and it turned out to be, of course, I should have looked at it closer, but I didn't. Turned out to be, you read these things and then you have these blanks to fill out. That's the sum total of what it is filling in these blanks. And I thought, boy, I wasted my money because I didn't learn anything.
Okay.
It's just,
So this is not what the parables are. We're in agreement on that. Now, another line here. If we hear a parable and we think, I really like that, or worse, fail to take any challenge, we are not listening well enough. You shouldn't like the parables because they should make you uncomfortable, right? Now, the other thing we've got to do is we've got to take into account how did Jesus' followers in the first century hear the parables that he told, and how do we hear them? Because there's probably a difference. We need to understand why Jesus told the stories he did in the times he did. What did it mean to them? What did they hear with that? And then we can figure out what we mean from that. Let's see. Another commentator says, the parables of Jesus are fictional stories. They are what Aristotle would have called poetry, for which he claimed a higher seriousness than history, since the historic is limited to what has happened, but the poetic is free to explore what might happen and is therefore more universal in nature. The parables of Jesus belong to a category for which Aristotle did not have a name, and it's a Greek word, theopoiesis, the creative interplay of theological witness and poetic imagination. I like that part. The creative interplay of theological witness and poetic imagination. A lot of times, a story can help us understand truths in ways that the truth can't. This is the reason I love the theater. This is the reason I love music, and so much, and the visual arts as well, because often a story told in a play can help us understand a truth in a new way. Sometimes seeing a painting helps us understand a truth in a new way as well, that words, straight up words, can't convey. Does that make sense to you? Anyone? Are we on the same page here?
I just think how music is an it's not everyone understands music. It's the language of everyone, music.
And yet it speaks to you probably in a different way than it speaks to me, right? Yeah. Now, I want us to understand, how am I doing on time? Okay. Jesus did not invent the parable. Parables existed before Jesus' time, and they were very important in Jewish culture. So Jesus really was picking up a tradition that those who heard him would have understood very, very well in this type of storytelling. Parables, even though they're not called parables, exist throughout the Old Testament. Hundreds of places in the Old Testament. Now, I have to confess, I had never, ever thought of this before.
No. Where are they? Like what?
I'm going to give you an example.
Don't you think today most of us are educated? Back then they were not. And so you told stories to teach people.
Yes.
And I mean, today we pick up books. If I couldn't read, you had to talk to me.
Right. Same reason we have stained glass windows in churches. They're visual aids to tell a story, right? Yes, and that's the tradition that we've come from. So what is an example of a parable in the Old Testament? Can someone think of an example?
Well, it's true. There aren't any.
Some people think Job is a parable.
What, like
Job itself could be yeah, you could. Okay, but before you tie yourself in knots, let me give you an example. Remember the story in 2 Samuel where the prophet Nathan goes to King David and confronts him about his adultery. So David has had illicit relations with Bathsheba, and then goes on to have Bathsheba's husband killed in battle, right? And Nathan comes to him, and he tells him a story. Do you remember this? About it's the story of the ewe lamb, right? There were two men in a certain city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had large flocks. The poor man had only one little ewe lamb. Amy Jo Levine says, let's call her Fluffy. Who was like a daughter to him. And when a visitor came to the rich man and it was time for dinner, the rich man took little Fluffy, butchered her, and served her for dinner. David hears the parable and says, as the Lord lives, the man who has done this deserves to die. And Nathan says, you are the man. Right? What Nathan has done is he's told a Jewish parable. He's told a teaching story that helps David understand himself in a way Nathan didn't have to go to say. David would not have heard it short of this story, right? But there are hundreds of examples in the Old Testament where similar stories are told that are like parables. And in the Jewish tradition, the very idea of storytelling is pervasive, so that it would have been traditional at home in the evening after dinner, or in the fields, or in the synagogues, to tell stories to each other. The rabbis did this, and the rabbinic texts are full of parables. And they usually take the form of something like this. I will tell you a parable, and mashal is the Hebrew word for parable. To what can the thing be compared? Or Jesus picks this up, and he often begins parables with an expression like, the kingdom of heaven is like, ... The Greek word now that we've picked up, parable, comes from two words put together that mean alongside or together with, as in parallel or paradox. And the word ballo, which means to cast or to throw. So to cast or to throw something together, to put something alongside. So a parable is a story that goes alongside a truth to help us understand the truth, right? In a sense, it is a teaching aid. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the difference between a parable and an allegory. A parable is not an allegory, because a parable requires no external key to explain what its elements mean. An allegory does. So, can someone give me an example of an allegory?
The allegory of the cave.
Okay, go ahead.
Plato's allegory of the cave.
And each element of that allegory has a meaning. Something stands for something, right? Parables.
We didn't hear.
The allegory of the cave, Plato's cave allegory. The shadows and the lights and all that, right? There's a lot of other literature with allegories.
Pilgrim's Progress.
Pilgrim's Progress, yes.
Animal Farm.
Animal Farm, The Wizard of Oz is allegorical. Did you know that? I've got a great book about that if you want to delve into that someday. It's fascinating. Fascinating, yes.
Didn't he mean that to be allegorical when he wrote it?
Yes. Yes. A lot of satire is allegorical, particularly older satire, right? So you got to understand what this means and that means.
Are the fables, like Aesop's fables, are those allegories or parables or?
I think they're more like parables because they don't have a set meaning.
They have a point.
They do have a point.
But then you have Gulliver's Travel, which was satire of that time. So that would fall more towards an allegory.
That would fall more toward allegory.
Where each thing has a specific meaning, like the writer wrote it.
Right.
To actually mean something.
You have a key.
Yeah, a character represents a certain.
Yeah, this means that, that means that, right? There was a movement in the past by one theologian in particular. There was a movement in the past by many people in the Christian church to turn the parables into allegories. And if you only understood the key to the parable, everyone would have it was always the same for every person. The mustard seed means this, and it always means this. And when you turn the parables into an allegory, you deny their ability to have transcendence over time. Right?
Because it only meant that.
If it
then
only means that,
it can't have any
it has no meaning to
interpretation.
us.
Yes.
Right. Or lesser meaning to us, perhaps. And I know my time's getting short. All right. Okay, I'm going to stop right there. I hope this is helpful. Before we get into digging into the parables, I just felt like we needed to set some understanding. I've got a little bit more on this that we've not gotten to today. I want to talk next week about context. What did the parables mean to those who first heard them versus what do they mean to us? I'll leave you with this quote. That's a well-known quote in biblical studies. A text without a context is just a pretext.
Oh.
A text without a context is just a pretext for making it say anything one wants it to say. Every text has a context. And unless we understand the context, we're going to make it a pretext for what we want it to say. Think on that one for this week. Last comments or questions about what we talked about today? Has this been helpful?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I don't want to bore you.
Are we gonna have a certain parable from week to week? Are we gonna, are you gonna start covering a certain parable from week to week?
I'm going to figure that out
You
this
just haven't
week.
decided which one?
What I'm struggling with is this. If you have an idea, I'd love to hear it. What I think I'm going to do is group some of the parables in like kinds. There are all sorts of structures by which people have arranged the parables and dissected them into this and that, right? Some of them are very laborious. Some of them have a theological agenda to it. And I'm struggling right now to figure out how we're going to package those. So in your study this week, if you come up with the perfect schema for this, I would love to know it. Because that's, I want to do the right. One option is we could just simply sample the parables. I think that's not a good option. I'd like to cover almost all the parables. But I think we're going to.
How many are there?
There's at least 40.
Oh.
So I don't think we're going to drag this out. We're going to do one parable a week. Because some of them go together. Some of them go together, and they're very brief. And I don't think we can drag out some of the parables to be an entire lesson.
I don't know, we could.
No kidding.
We could. Nobody else.
Well, the problem is they repeat.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. If you start with one, though, you don't have to go back to put it in the next book.
Well, you could, but it may be slightly different in one book, and so you may want to talk about that as well. So my task for this week is to figure out how we're going to arrange these. And once I do, I think I'll give you a handout, so that you'll know each week.
So we can fill in the blanks.
So you can
Like when we find a story.
I don't have the energy to make the blanks right now. So you're safe. You're safe on that. All right. I hope we had a successful live stream after all with that. Thanks everyone there. As we close, let's